Hi, I am Angela Kempe,
And I'm Jeffrey Hall.
and we are fifth grade teachers at Beehive Elementary, and we are here to show our presentation of how we did the PLC process this past school year.
So here's our first thoughts on the PLC process. Our first thoughts were, it's a big workload. It seems like we already have enough to do. It's a lot to do. I feel like sometimes we're running in circles, and also we don't have time to do this type of stuff. So our first thoughts, we're not really excited about the idea, but we have to do it anyway, so we do.
All right, our little plan that we came up with was we were going to have a 3-week rotation. So the first week, we are going to teach the material for the first time. That means we're just doing whole group instruction like we're supposed to, and teaching all the kids the same concept at the same time, and then we're going to see who gets the concept at the end of the first week. At the end of that week, we give them a quiz, and we see how they've done with that concept.
When you've done that quiz, usually the first time you get this nice little round look, and it's really easy to separate those students from the high group, the medium group, and the low group. So that's what we did. We put all the high group in one class, all the medium in another, and these poor little low students in the third one. Then we had to decide which teacher was the best to teach each group. So depending on how that teacher's class did, we assigned them a different teacher for the next week for the follow-up teaching.
The second week, we would have your enrichment group, which was, of course, the high group, and then you have your reteach middle group, where they kind of got it, but didn't totally get the concepts like they needed to, and then, of course, you have your reteach low group, where they just don't seem to have a clue, or whatever, they just did not get the concept.
Then when they're in the low group, like each group we had to change. The low group, first of all, was very strategic. Sometimes we had to start from scratch, and sometimes we even had to just start with a totally different approach. We had to watch them very closely because we noticed that these kids had a very short attention span and were a little bit more high on the behavior side. So we decided with this group, each week we had to be very, very strict.
All right, the medium group, all we really needed to do with these kids is they were getting it. They just needed some basics kind of gone over again because they didn't quite get it that first time. And maybe clear up any little pieces that they are just getting confused still, or for some reason, they're not getting that part. And then they usually got it after that week because they were very close to getting it in the first place.
And the high group was super duper awesome and easy to do because these are the students who understood and captured the idea. And so we threw together some fun ways of using that same math they'd learned to have an activity. For example, this one down here is Google SketchUp, where the students were able to add and subtract fractions to come up with the measurements for these buildings and actually built their own house. They really enjoyed that. There was an example where students cooked and did some actual cooking in class using the conversion of fractions and a few other ones. And as you can see, the students were very excited to be in this enrichment group.
All right, after we did that second week where we retaught it, then we retested them. We actually used the same test so that we could compare the results to see if they had actually made gains.
When we compared the data, if we did really well, we could tell we got this nice little boxy look. There were some students who made some great progress, some who didn't do quite as well, but we felt really good with this one. Once in a while we had a few that went down, and that raised some caution, and we had to kind of look back and find out why they had messed up or had gotten worse. And in some of these cases, for example this one, they'd learned fractions, how to add and subtract the first week, and then the new week they learned how to multiply and divide, and the students were confusing some of those basic concepts. And so we went and cleared those up again as well.
All right, if they still don't get it, they get to stay in for recess. Which means they get to do a reteach packet because they've already been taught in small group as a reteach. Now they just get a packet of information or a packet of work from the reteach a book and go math, and they just get to stay in and work on that packet. Once they pass off the packet, they get to take the test. It's a different test this time. And if they don't pass that off, they get to redo the work packet again. But usually they passed it off after redoing one work packet.
The students usually got the idea pretty quick. Most of them, after the first time, started working harder, and you saw a lot of progress in class. So the first week was just direct instruction. Second week, we leveled them and retaught them. And then the third week, if they didn't get it, they had to stay in until they passed. This is what we liked about it and what we didn't like about it.
All right. We really liked that we all stayed on the same page. We would talk to each other, we would coordinate, we'd make sure that we were all teaching the same lessons during that week. And if we needed to, we'd slow down or go faster, depending on whatever we needed to do. It helped to improve our teaching practice because we could talk to each other. We were all at the same spot, we could get ideas so that we could make sure we were teaching it the best of our ability at the time. And it also made planning way easier because, like we said, we get to talk to each other and we're all on the same page. We just plan it out together. There was no individual teacher going this direction or this other direction.
All right, so we had more resources, like Angela said. It's so much nicer to have that input and be able to talk and get more stuff. Plus, it put the students, it made them responsible for their own work. They all got 3 chances if they needed, but they started to encourage each other and to start supporting each other. It was really fun to watch these students start high-fiving each other as soon as they passed a test that they've been working really hard to pass. But they did, they really wanted each other to do that, and it took a little bit of the load off us teachers.
All right, what was hard on us was meeting every week. We really weren't super excited about that part, but it turned out not to be half as bad as we thought because we would meet and we didn't necessarily meet as long as the rest of the teachers would meet every week or every other week. But it still was looking at all the data, going over it. It took time from our planning Fridays. But
it got into a routine where once we got it down, we could go in and we knew exactly what we needed to do. So on our second thought, the workload wasn't near as bad because we had 3 people working on the same things. We didn't feel like we were running in circles. We felt like we had a clear direction, one direction that we needed to just keep going, and we helped each other stay on that. As far as time, like Angela said, it wasn't so much on Fridays that we had more time, but throughout the week, we knew exactly what we were doing, so it helped us throughout the week not to have to do extra planning. So our final thoughts were, good time, Soul Club. We actually enjoyed it, and we all have decided that if it came down to it, we would do it again.
yeah, we would continue it even if it was not something that was trying to be implemented, just because it made teaching better, and you knew if your kids didn't get it, that they would have a second chance and a third chance, whereas sometimes it's harder to juggle the small group time in your classroom, and this made it super easy.